Okay, well, let's continue on with 4.4. This is 4.4b as far as the video is concerned. And jumping to page 287, equations involving fractions. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue on with what we have been doing, only we're going to put some fractions there. And the first one is example 5 is x over 2 plus x over 6 equals 8. Okay, again, we're trying to get our variable isolated or by itself. You have a couple options here. You can deal with the fractions if you'd like by finding common denominators and then adding the fractions. Or if you remember a few lessons ago, I said if you find a common denominator and multiply the entire equation by that common denominator, it'll get rid of the fractions and you're just dealing with numbers. So that's what I would do. If you don't want to deal with the fractions, just find a common denominator. In this case, it's 6. 6 goes into 6 once, and 2 goes into 6 3 times, so it goes into it evenly, so I know 6 is the common denominator. I'm going to multiply the entire thing by 6, so we're going to use distributive. Eight times 6 is 48. That's where that comes from. So 6 times x is 6x. 6 times x is 6x. Now I'm going to reduce. 6 over 2 is actually 3. 6 over 6 is 1 equals 48. That looks a lot prettier than this mess up here. So we add our like terms. Divide by our 4. And we get x equals 12 for an answer there. So remember that trick. That's one of those tricks that you look at and you're thinking, oh golly, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do with that. Remember that trick, it comes in handy. Actually, if we have something like this, which is the next example, we do the same thing. If you look here, common denominator, this is actually 2 over 1, so whatever we find as a common denominator here will work for here. So common denominator of this is going to be 4. So we get 8x plus 4 over 2, because 4 times 1 is 4, equals 4 times 3 is 12 over 4, which gives me a simplified number like that. And if you remember a couple sections ago, subtract 2, 8x equals 1, and divide by 8, and you get x equals 1 over 8. And you're done with that. Alright, let's look at another one here. 3 over x plus 2 equals 1/2. Okay, so a couple different options here. Your common denominator is going to be, whenever you have a denominator that's an x or a variable, your common denominator is going to contain that x. So my common denominator for this is going to be whatever other denominator I have times this. Okay, so these two brought together will be my common denominator. So in this case it's 2x. So I'm going to multiply the whole thing by 2x. And that gives me 6x. 2x times 3 is 6. Plus 2x times 2 is 4x equals 2x over 2. Which gives me, these cross out, don't they? X over x is 1. 6 plus 4x equals 2 over 2 is x. Alrighty. Well, let's figure out what to do here. We can move this x over here and move this 6 over here. We can do it any way we want. Now remember, I told you I'm going to follow what I told you earlier just because it keeps you from getting too confused. Is we're going to get the 4x isolated because it's the bigger number in front of the x here. So this is a 6 here, positive or negative 6. It's a positive 6. There's no sign in front of it, so it's a positive 6. To get rid of it, I'm going to do that. So that leaves me with 4x equals x minus 6. See, I can't combine these because they're not like terms. One is a variable, one is not. So that being the case, I'm going to let me erase this stuff up here and leave what we have. So So I can continue on. So I'm going to rewrite the whole thing, x minus 6 here. That's where we're at. Alright, so the next step is, again, getting the x's together. So we've got 4x here equals x minus 6. We need to get rid of this x, so let's subtract it. And we get 3x equals negative 6. Remember, it's a minus sign, but it's also a negative sign. They're one and the same. So if it's all by itself, it's a negative 6. When it's here with the x, it's a minus 6. So just to remind you that if it's by itself, it turns into a negative. When it's with other terms, it's a minus sign. So I'm going to divide by 3, x equals negative 6 over 3, which is negative 2. Now the book does it a different way. Feel free to do it that way if you'd like. Alright, the problem sets on page 289, not any different than what we had been doing. Numbers 31 to 46 have to do with fractions. And remember, when you're doing these fractions, look at the denominators and multiply the entire thing by the common denominator. It's going to make life a lot easier on you, because then you get rid of the fractions right there at the beginning. Okay, so let's look at number 44. Okay, now we have common denominators, so we can put those together and get 8 over x equals 2. Okay, so when we have 8 over x equals 2, it looks like the book might be going into something new that they really didn't go into very much. But if we were to rewrite this and multiply the whole thing by the common denominator, we'd get 7x over x plus x over x equals 2x. That would cross those out. Remember, x over x is 1. It doesn't just disappear. So x over x, that becomes a 1. So we end up with 7 plus 1 equals 2x. So 8 equals 2x. We're going to divide by 2, and we get an x equal to 4. Now, what I had on the board before would have been a lot more confusing to do, because we had 8 over x equals 2. So then you've got an x in the denominator, makes it a lot harder. So multiply by that common denominator every time. Even if the denominators are the same, make sure you multiply that. 43, 44, 41, 42, they all have those denominators. They're already the same. Just multiply it by that denominator to get rid of your fractions. Other than that, it looks like we've done pretty much every example, so I won't go into any more problems on 4.4.